Good afternoon and welcome to our Financial Advisor Forum. I'm Greg Greenberg from The Street. Vanessa O'Connell is the author of the fantastic new book, Wheelmen. It recounts the rise and fall of cyclist Lance Armstrong, and it also highlights the tight connection between Wall Street and professional sports. Seriously, you can't just follow the athletes, you have to follow the money as well. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So what makes the Lance Armstrong story the greatest sports conspiracy ever, which is the subtitle of your book? Because there's a lot of conspiracies, there's a lot of doping, Olympic athletes, baseball players. Why Lance?
That is a very good question. I think, obviously there's doping in all sports, and there have been big doping scandals in many other sports. But when my co-author and I sat back and looked at the Lance Armstrong story and put it into perspective, we started to see it as a conspiracy for three reasons. One, the type of doping that the team was engaging in was more than just an athlete in a locker room kind of shooting himself up with EPO or slapping on a testosterone patch. We were talking about what the riders were engaged in was, at certain points, blood doping, where they would remove blood and then have it inserted back into their bodies at strategic moments during the Tour de France, sometimes all together. In fact, we open the book with a scene on the team bus where the bus is pretending to be broken down and the riders are getting an infusion of blood before a rest day on the Tour de France. So we viewed it as a conspiracy for that reason. It was broader than just one athlete. Also, this lasted for 14 years. This was a secret that not just Armstrong had, but those around him, his supporters who knew, also kept this a secret for 14 years in the face of denials year after year. Every year that he won, there were allegations that he doped. And for 14 years, they managed to keep this a secret. And for that reason, we also viewed it as the greatest conspiracy in sports.
And you usually uncover those secrets by following the money, to use the old Watergate term. So let's start out with the money, where it all started. And in this case, it started with Thomas Wiesel, who, if you remember the tech bubble, the original tech bubble, was an investment banker, brought forth a lot of big tech IPOs. How did he elevate the sport of racing through his money?
Yes. I mean, we in this book really go far beyond just the Lance Armstrong scandal that many people have heard about. We go back and look at the rise of American cycling. And we really fell in love with that story because it's a really interesting story. Americans were laughable in the sport of cycling until around the mid-'80s. Thomas Wiesel is a Silicon Valley investment banker who took up cycling in his 40s and became very passionate about it. And he hired this coach, Eddie B., who was in the United States from Poland and who taught Americans sort of the team tactics of cycling, told a lot of the American riders they were way too fat, had to slim down. Thomas Wiesel not only hired Eddie B., but also brought in a lot of sponsors to the sport. He hired Mark Gorski, a former gold medalist in cycling, to help him line up sponsors who poured money into this event. Wiesel and Gorski and the others who were involved in the sport early on really focused on the Tour de France, and they decided that they were going to build a team that could win at this event. That was radically different. And you could think of it as a different business model, in fact, from many European teams which were riding throughout the season in all of these races. The American team, which became the U.S. Postal Service team, really focused on the big event. And that strategy worked for many years.
They won a lot of big events. They kept on winning. Now, how big was Lance Armstrong to American corporate sponsors like Nike and General Mills? When he gets on the Wheaties box, sales jump 10%. And then what happens when he's outed and he has to admit to Oprah Winfrey and the world that he did dope? How much of a problem was it for the sponsors?
Well, this is another reason we view this as the greatest conspiracy in the history of sports, is that Armstrong really, surpassed and transcended the world of just athletics and competition on a bike.
He had a building in the Nike compound named after him.
He had a building in the Nike compound named after him. He started a foundation, which, of course, had a lot of money coming in from Armstrong's sponsors. He, at one point, when he was retired from cycling, people were even talking about him as a possible candidate for governor of Texas. So he really surpassed that celebrity athlete and became sort of an icon to many people in the public. So, essentially, the money flowed in from the time he started winning that 1999 Tour de France. He went on to have a record-breaking 7 wins in a sport that Americans really were laughable in previously. It was too good a story for corporate America. They threw money at him. Subaru, Coca-Cola, Bristol-Myers Squibb, Trek, Nike, I mean, the list
And
goes
then
on.
all the money went away. They yanked it all back. What's Lance Armstrong worth now? Because we've seen some athletes have a big problem. Some athletes get busted for doping, whether it's David Ortiz or Alex Rodriguez or Jason Giambi, and their careers go on. Some of them are forgiven, and some of them they just keep playing. You see that a lot in Major League Baseball. What's Lance Armstrong worth now?
That is a really tough question to answer because people can do various things with their assets. It's really hard for a third party to kind of get an accurate tally. He has homes in Aspen and Austin and in Hawaii. He has sold his jet. You know, he's scaled back for sure. There's
and I'm
no
not just
doubt.
talking about his monetary assets. What's his name worth? You know, will he be able to come back, maybe not ride again, but start a business? Or is his name just mud?
Well, you know, he lately has been saying that he lost $75 million the day that he admitted on Oprah that he had doped. So that's a big hit if it's true. There could be some exaggeration behind that claim that he's making because he also faces a lot of lawsuits seeking a lot of money right now. For instance, his former teammate, Floyd Landis, and the Department of Justice are seeking $120 million from Armstrong and his former director sportif, Johan Brunel. If that case goes to trial and if Armstrong loses, that could hurt him substantially. 120 million is a big figure. You know, maybe that much wouldn't be the sum that they would settle for or that Landis and the Justice Department would win, but that could hurt him. He's got a few other legal issues he's facing.
He's got a lot of issues, it seems to me. But it's a fantastic book. Thanks for coming on and speaking about it. The money came. Seems like the money went. Thanks for writing about it, Vanessa O'Connell. And thank you for watching the Streets Financial Advisor Forum from New York. I'm Greg Greenberg.